Willie doesn't golf?
Well, current.
Current. Bob's not a golfer.
Although Sal, I don't know if he does.
Yeah, we're live.
Golf talk. We're gonna put a can on golf talk.
Down below.
Right here.
2-0.
Nico.
Oh.
That's the technical expertise.
The whole room audio was muted, so if they were talking, you couldn't hear them.
I had him on mute.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I think we can go ahead and get started. It's 5 o'clock. Welcome to our annual evening meeting, board meeting of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. It's 5 p.m. on September 28th. I guess we just are having somebody else join us here, but we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So that's going to mute all of y'all on the Zoom. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United
United
States
States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. So that, would you please conduct a roll call?
Sure will. Brian Daines,
Here.
Mike Dowd,
Here.
Frank Facciano,
Here.
Don Gottschall, Justin Grimshaw,
Here.
John Hayes,
Here.
Ron Heckman,
Here.
Lauren Hamburger,
Larry's here.
Yep. He's muted.
You're on mute.
okay, James Irwin, Jeff Matskin,
Here.
Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Mike Stershik,
Here.
Matt Turk,
I'm here.
Chris Worley,
Here.
and Tara Zrinsky.
Full house. Well done. Maybe we should do all these in the nighttime. Sylvette, do we have any public comment tonight?
We do not, sir.
Okay. I trust you all read through the minutes of our August 31st board meeting. I'd ask for a motion to approve those minutes as presented.
I'll move.
Glenn is going to get the first. All right, we got a second. All in favor of approving the minutes of August 31st, 2021, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Minutes are approved. That will take us to our committee reports. I will hand it to Brian, who I'm sure will hand it to Todd. The treasurer's report.
Yes. Go ahead, Todd.
Oh, I thought I would get at least my little pause there before I had to do it.
No, you're right. Jump into action.
Let's talk about the financial report through August. It's important to remember last month we did a budget amendment. So if you look at your financials in Novus, what you will see is zero budget variance through the end of August because we made those adjustments at the end of August. All those budget adjustments will be made September through December. So there's no budget variance, but we will talk about that a little bit more down the road. August, good month, not great. Compared to July. July, we knocked it out of the park. We had our best July on record. August, about 10% below where we were in 2019, because that's kind of our, back to the future kind of point. But still, year to date, we are up 8% versus the 2017. If you remember, that was kind of our benchmark for 2021. All right, let's just kind of ballpark around 2017. And for those that don't remember, before COVID, we had how many months in a row of increased traffic month over month? 29, 30. So we were on a roll. So 2017 was a much lower level than 18 or even 19. So that's why we used that, because the uncertainty of COVID. But again, 8% above 2017 year to date. Good stuff. Next slide. So I do a little differently this year because of the budget adjustments, kind of remind everybody what we did. That's January to August. When we do our budgets, we always say, this is the year budget. And then behind the scenes, and each month we say, all right, this is what we think is going to happen in January, this is what's going to happen in February, our best guess based on a lot of our seasonality and whatnot. But I wanted to point out January to August because we just did that budget amendment, and you don't have any variances there that you would normally have based on where we thought we'd be. So you can see where we were January to August in 2017. We had 2.9 million of our ending up $3.9 million of net income. That's the net. So a good portion of that came in January and August. See the same thing in 18, 19, same thing. See actual 2020, you see that negative red number, 1.9 million. Remember COVID, all that exciting stuff, in case you forgot. That's what our cares. And you can see what we had year end on the cares over there and what that difference is. And then our original budget, remember our exciting $68,000 number? I know John's on listening. He gets so excited when we say we had $68,000 of net income for the whole year we budgeted. But our last budget amendment, we took it up to a more respectable number of almost $2.4 million. And a lot of those adjustments were in the latter part of the year. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But again, through January through August, we are over $1 million so far. But we think that the last part of the year is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we still think we're going to be a lot ahead of where we originally thought and ended up about 2.4 million. Next slide. Just to remind folks, as we talked about this a little bit in committee, why so much of that back-end expenses. This is a reminder of the amendment that we did last month. And for those of you who forgot, a big portion of them is personnel. We added a lot of positions. Now, those will be in the budget. Whether or not we hire them right away, obviously, it'll be a budget variance. But again, a lot of those are going to be reflected. And you see all of them, that works out to $1.2 million of variance before we get to Queen City and depreciation. So a lot of stuff is just kind of getting us back up to a more, more of a business level, because again, as our revenues go up and our traffic goes up, there's more activity, and we're also adjusting to labor and that quick change, which require us to hire folks in a tough market and deal with a lot of changes as we do. Next slide. This cash flow, not a lot of changes there. Next slide. Most important thing is to remember that we're above our 60-day number. We said we want to have at least 60 days or 60 days of cash on hand after reserves. And when this is out 6 months, even if we push ourselves back up to the 2019 level, we end up with 114 days cash on hand. I think that's it. I try to make it quick. Any questions? I mean, I know it's a lot of stuff, but again, last month we did that budget amendment, which was a big budget amendment, but it actually increased our net income up to 2.4 million. And you got a lot of those expenses that are going to be on the back end. So the best way to kind of summarize it is we're ahead of that number now. We're over $4 million net income through August if you count the cares. But we're going to spend some of that in the latter part of the year with some of this Delta variant and all that stuff out there. You see nobody's out there today because we're doing construction. That obviously means no revenue. So again, this on the back end. Any questions? Okay. I'll stand up.
This is Brian. Can I just ask one question?
Sure, as long as it's just one, Brian.
All right. Sylvette, if you don't mind going back one slide, the slide right before the question mark.
The cash flow?
Yeah, one more back. 6, page
Okay.
6. Okay. I just had a question on the contingency at 60,226 a day. So, and we see that those have been adjusted. Can you tell me just a little bit? That's the 2019 level.
Okay.
What do you anticipate that per day number will be going forward, and how often do we adjust that?
That's a great question. Normally we adjust it every year. It's a number. So what that number is basically our annual expenses divided by 365. So if we got no revenue in at all, something happened and we had to shut down the airport, those would be the expenses we would be paying out every day without any revenue. So the original number, if you see there, that was the original 2021 budget of $49,204. We upped it 12. That's probably a little aggressive. I tend to be a little bit aggressive in some of these numbers, conservative. So it's not quite that high. And then 60,000 is where we're in 2019. I don't think we'll get quite to that level, but certainly we could get close to that with some of the budget amendments. Does that answer your question?
It does. So that, the answer to that is then that it's a conservative guess, consistent with the way you do things, and I understand that. But I knew we had made a budget amendment, and so I just was wondering if that amount was adjusted.
And if you go back one
Good
more,
question.
so back to that slide again, I mean, I think it's important to also point out a couple other things, and then you might miss too. You can check on the contingency reserve. Those numbers were also, so line 32, that was also increased. So that was increased when we did the amendment as well. We did that as well. So that's a bigger number than probably we need. We just upped that number to a higher level. I think it was 900,000 before that. So I just upped that number as well. And you can also see the reserve there for future debt service. At some point, we're going to swap that out for the actual debt service on the connector. But that's just kind of a placeholder because at some point, we're going to have to pay it directly to the bank. Does that answer all your questions? I know it's a lot of moving parts, and money is obviously important, especially as we're trying to manage resources.
Thank you.
Yep, you good?
So
Thank you. Yep.
if the question is Todd conservative, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian. Any other questions for Todd related to the treasurer's report? I'd ask for a motion then that we accept the treasurer's report for August. Thank you, Glenn.
Second.
Thank you, John. All in favor of approving the report as presented, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? The report is accepted. We have two items on our finance committee that I think Todd is going to walk us through again.
Okay. Okay. You good with that?
You okay?
Every year, we do our MMO, which is our minimum municipal obligation in regards to both our defined benefit pension plan, our traditional pension plan, and our defined contribution plans. These are the minimums that are required, and we do those working with our actuary from Foster & Foster. And this is just a summary of those numbers. So one of the things that's really worked, so the total minimum obligation is $539,000, which is a significant decrease from last year. We went over this in the meetings because of the performance of the market and a lot of things we've done with changing the plan and reducing the fees. We've done a lot of due diligence over the last few years, which has helped us out a lot. So that $539,000, go to the next slide. So this is kind of showing you what it was. You can see in 2016, the total amount that we paid was called $380,000. And then it shot up with our extra contribution in 2018 to over $1 million. But that's also when we started making a lot of plan changes into those plans. And last year, it was $786,000. So what we're suggesting is we stay consistent with that number, close to $800,000. So even though the minimum number is $539, and we are, for those of you who haven't figured this out already, we are 100% funded. So when you're 100%, over 100% funded, what happens is they actually take money away because they're trying to get you to 100. So if you're below 100, they're trying to get you, you got to contribute more to get to that 100. If you're above 100, it actually gives you a decrease so that you can get down to that 100. We're saying we don't want to do that because obviously, the market's been on a roll and what goes up may come down and then we'll be chasing this obligation. And there's also been discussions about our assumed rate of return, which is 7.5%, which talking to our advisor says 7.5%, we've been doing it pretty good. We've averaged actually over 10.5 for the last few years. But going forward, 7.5 might be a little bit of a challenge, just based on the high level that we're at. So what we're saying is we're going to stay close to that 786, and we're suggesting that we put in $249,000 extra to stay close to that number. So even though our minimum is $539, it would take us to a total number of $801,000, consistent relatively closely to last year's number. So again, rather than lower, because there's a couple ways you can do it. The MMO is based on the 7.5. So if we were to say, all right, we assume it's going to be 7, that MMO goes up. And then we're required, by law, we have no wiggle room at all. But if we do it on our own and just contribute more money, it does the same thing, but it gives us a little bit more flexibility. And the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pay it quarterly. Right now, we're only paying it once a year. We pay the whole thing in October. We're gonna pay it quarterly, so it gives them a little bit more cash flow and the management of the money. So again, it's just about being a good steward of this pension plan, because there's nothing behind this plan, meaning there's nothing, so if the plan goes defunct, there's nothing that's gonna protect it. So that's why we have to be really good stewards of it down the road. Anybody have any questions on that? Again, this is us saying, let's be good stewards, $249,000. That would actually be the highest amount that we've ever contributed extra to the plan. But a lot of that is because I don't think the plan's ever been over 100%. I think we're at 106% on average. The union plan is a little, I think about 109, and I think the non-union is about 103. So about half and half, so about 106. Anybody have any questions? Again, we want to stay above 100. Go ahead.
Just that, what I heard during the finance meeting, and look, we do want to be conservative, and bringing down that interest rate assumption is a good thing, but what I heard is that it's not at all unreasonable or out of the ordinary. 7.5% is about where folks are.
Correct. That's a great point to bring out. It is a great point. Again, I think somebody said earlier, I think Matt said that I'm conservative, and John's probably more conservative than I am because he's on the line, and he wanted us to go down to 7, 6.5, but this does the same thing by basically putting in more money. It's just us doing it voluntary as opposed to being required by law to do it. Again, we're over 100%. We're in good shape. And what we're going to do is some of that money, because we're pushing some of the people to the defined contribution, some of the new hires, they're going to get extra money as well. So it's across the board. It's just a good thing to do across the board to make sure we're good stewards of this pension plan long term. Any questions?
And just one additional comment.
Yes.
In terms of where I've been coming from with regard to the pension plan, in my opinion, 7.5 is too high. When you look at historical returns in the market, it aggregates, or it typically backs down to that 6.5 range. I would not advocate we go that low, but our plan is fully funded because of the strong stewardship of the management team and of the board, not because of plan design. Boards and management teams turn over. Plan design requires effort in order to change it. So I just ask everybody to keep that in mind as we continue to keep an eye on that assumed rate of return. I'd be much more comfortable at 7, even 7.25 is better than 7.5. I know a lot of people use 7.5, but a lot of people use 7.5 and their plans are not nearly as well stewarded as ours is. So
John,
everything's good for now, but it's something that I'll keep bringing up on at least an annual basis.
John, does overfunding it as we're doing counter your concerns?
It does, but that goes to the stewardship of the management team and the board. Bluntly, this organization has had boards that haven't been as strong on the financial side and conservative stewardship as this board is. And like I said, boards turn over, so I would hate to say we could end up back where we were, but there's no guarantee.
Gotcha.
And I know you had a question, I'll get you. But you did mention the plan changes. We actually have, I wouldn't call them to change the plan itself, but what we have done is eliminated a lot of new entrants going into the plan. So that in itself is reducing the liability for new hires coming into that plan for most of it. So that plan change, I would call plan change, maybe call it something else, but that particular thing is one of the things that's lowering our liability down the road. I know you had a
said about pushing the new employees into the defined contribution. What groups are in the defined contribution?
Let's see. It is the non-union went first. Then we took the firefighters. The police just went over. The Teamsters are the only group that is does not have new hires in the defined benefit plan. Should I say? Excuse me, defined contribution plan.
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions or comments for Todd?
Move to accept the report.
We're going to approve the MMO for pension.
Excuse me, approve the MMO.
Thanks, Mike.
Plus the additional contribution.
Plus the additional contribution.
Correct.
There you go.
Second.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Any opposed?
Aye.
No opposed, we'll approve that. And then we've got our audit.
Yeah, so, what day was that, Wednesday of last week? We narrowed it down to 2 finalists, 2 great firms. Cherry Beckert and Crow are incumbent on our auditor. 2 great firms, both of them with significant airport experience. We had a great discussion during our finance committee meeting, but I think what we came up with is the recommendation to move forward with another 3 years of Crow, just based on the pains of transition, and they've done a good job for us. I think that summarizes it up with the bulk of the concerns. But again, 2 great firms. Pricing, when you start really getting into it, was pretty close. The big issue was really transition and the internal time that it takes to transition, particularly during the pandemic. If we had concerns with Crow, then maybe we would say, hey, it's time to move on. And one of the things that the committee did suggest is that after 3 years that we think about just switching, and we know that up front, just to kind of get a fresh.
So it would be 9 years with them.
9 years. And before that, our previous auditor we had for 20 years. So again, they've done a good job, and they do report to the board. I don't think anybody's had any problem. And the big thing when we switched it, because we did have a local firm that did a good job for us, but the biggest reason we switched was because we wanted someone that had other airport experience. Unfortunately, we're the only airport here, so we needed some benchmarking, and that was one of the reasons we went with Crow. But both of these firms have significant airport experience, which was a significant criteria for us when we determined the finalists. Any questions? Any thoughts? Okay.
Okay. If there's no questions or comments, I'd ask for a motion to approve the,
So moved.
thank you, Glenn. And I got a second. Everybody's getting excited for dinner, I think. All in favor of approving the audit service, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, Crow will continue to be our auditor. Michael Dowd, would you walk us into our business committee, please?
Matt, we reviewed 3 grants for the American Rescue Plan. We'll deal with each one of them separately. If Ryan's there, perhaps he can give us a brief assessment of each of them.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Evening, everyone. So I'll run through these pretty quickly. They're similar grants that we got the last few years with the CARES and Sarissa for the COVID relief bills. Basically, the first one we're looking for approval on is to be utilized to cover operating and debt service payments for ABE. The amount is automatically calculated throughout the country for airports, so we're basically given an amount and apply for that funding amount. Again, there's no local match, 100% federally funded. This is the most that we've received of the 3 COVID reliefs at this point, just shy of $6 million. And we're anticipating getting the official grant offer in November of this year. Again, in terms of timing, just want to get the approval in now for the application and the acceptance. So we're looking for approving the acceptance of AIP Grant 115-2022, the amount of $5,987,974 through the ARPA grant.
Take a motion to accept that grant.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Terry's got a question before we get there.
No, I was making a motion.
Ah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'll give you the second. All in favor of accepting the grant, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That grant is accepted.
Aye.
Next grant.
Great. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Ryan, go ahead and talk about the second grant.
Sure. So the next one, Grant 116-2022, is also for ABE, but this one is just specific to our airport concessions to provide them relief. Again, 100% federal share, an allocated formula. So this one is $317,812. Same parameters as the other grant apply for this one.
Want to tell us who some of those concessions would be, the car rental agencies, anybody else?
Yep, the car rental agencies, the on-site concessions, food and beverage. It's all based on the formula in terms of their revenue and market share.
How do we provide them with relief? Exactly.
So we We submit for the reimbursement request, get the funding, and then divvy it out based on the formula.
Give them money.
Yes, based on
Straight
what's
cash.
approved, yeah.
So we have a motion to accept that grant?
I'll make
So moved.
A second?
Second.
They're quick on the
Any questions
They
for Ryan?
are. Sorry, that's delay.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any opposed? And then the third grant is for Queen City, and Ryan, take us through that one as well.
Correct, yep, again, same parameters for Queen City. This one's for $59,000, can be used for operations, personnel, debt service payments, similar to the other grants we received. This is grant 31, 2022 for $59,000 through ARPA.
Any questions for Ryan? Have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
So moved.
Second? Enthusiastically. All those in favor of accepting the grant, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That concludes the business to be conducted by the board. I'd ask Tom to provide us with a report from the director.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to do that. As Todd mentioned, August, not quite as strong as July, but still a really good month for us, 225% up over last August, and about 9.7% down from August of 2019 in terms of our passenger traffic levels. Taking a look forward into September and coming to a close here, but as far as nationally what TSA is seeing going through their checkpoints, right now about 13% up versus last September, down about 23%. When we look at what's happening at ABE, our activity is up about 80% over last September, but we're down about 30%, so a little bit more than the national average. If we didn't have our airfield closures this month, we'd only be down about 15%. So the actual closures, the 72-hour closure and the 54-hour closure we're going through right now, will see us lose about 9,000 passengers this month. And again, we programmed that, we knew about it, but it just all part of the construction on the runway project. So in terms of some follow-up since the board meeting in August, on September 2nd, we had U.S. Senator Bob Casey Jr. here. He was here to talk a little bit about infrastructure. We know there's a bill being discussed right now in Washington about that. Talked a little bit about our Terminal Connector project, the runway. On September 11th, we held a moment of silence here at ABE in the terminal in remembrance of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We also handed out some American flags and American flag pins to passengers. We also participated with Airports Council International and did an industry-wide video commemorating that with a lot of employees who were here during 9/11. On September 18th, basically during the middle of one of our first closures for the runway, we had our emergency plan tabletop exercise. We had 76 individuals, participants here from 35 different agencies, so very well attended. Good event held right out here in the main terminal. It was awfully quiet outside the windows. On September 19th, we did have down at Braden the Equilibrium polo match. So 400 attendees, a little lighter and still working through the pandemic, but great to have it. And they're already planning for next year. So obviously they were real pleased about how that went. September 17th through the 19th, we had the 72-hour closure. 6,500 tons of asphalt put down in the intersection of the two runways out here. So significant success. We're in the midst of our current closure, 54 hours. That'll wrap up Thursday morning at 6 a.m., so you'll start hearing planes in the sky again. But Mother Nature's trying to throw a few wrinkles at us, but we've been doing okay, and we're still on target, so that looks encouraging for us. And in terms of upcoming events, October 4th through the 8th, it's a busy week next week. We have Customer Appreciation Week, so a number of things we're going to be doing in the terminal and at our different facilities here in just appreciation of the customers. And we're also holding another TSA pre-check event. And that'll be occurring, instead of the mobile RV unit that they had, that'll actually be occurring here in the main terminal in the aviator room. So you can sign up from our website or on tsa.gov if you're interested in the TSA pre-check or you have questions, certainly let us know.
Dates on that?
October 4th through the 8th. Right around the corner. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Just one, I think that this is obviously a giant asterisk on passenger travel for September. For the record.
For the record,
when we're looking back
when
on
you're
the,
looking back,
on the tremendous upward trajectory, we can reflect.
you can certainly reflect on all the closure activity and the impact of
This is
that.
self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted, so, please do not panic, but, certainly a very essential project, and I think we're very excited about the product we're getting out there on the intersection of those runways. It looks really, really good.
Awesome.
Good press lately, Colin, with the traffic and such.
We did talk a little bit about summer traffic, and it's right back to those pre-pandemic levels. So September, shouldn't be a surprise when we see that those numbers aren't exactly where we thought summer was, but certainly.
Travel, I mean, we know that, right?
It's right. That's right. Still seeing a lag in business travel at this point.
Very good. Any other questions for Tom? All right, thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Judge Freeberg, do you have anything to report?
Yes, some important reviews have been completed. The Air Products ground lease review was completed. The Rockefeller escrow review has been completed. That related to an extra $700,000, as I recall, for PennDOT expenses that Rockefeller contributed. There was an amendment to the agreement to accomplish that, and that's been done. Majestic, which is important, obviously important to everybody, the Majestic option agreement review is about to be or has been completed, so that's good news, of course. 3 tax assessment appeals were filed and heard in Lehigh County on September 9th, and we're awaiting the decision, and we anticipate that the decision hopefully will go our way. That's essentially what we've been involved with, as well as the other routine matters, right to know request and so forth.
Excellent. Any questions for Judge Freeberg? Thank you, sir. Is there any new business to be discussed? There's none. We are going to step into executive session for a report from Tom that's purely for informational matters. I would ask for a motion to enter into said executive session.
I'll make a motion.
And there will be no votes or.
Yes, we will not vote after this session, so we will simply adjourn.